The idea behind the show is simply asking guests what they would tell a stranger on a plane if they were sitting next to them and the stranger asked them for advice.
The scenery is passing very fast, but the seer is constant. The one who's seeing is the same.
Let me appreciate you for asking a question that I haven't been asked after 2,500 or so interviews over the years.
Is you have to drop the ego, which is everyone's greatest obstacle.
In 2008, Grant and I had been married for 4 years. I was pregnant with my first child. The economy was collapsing, and we were on the verge of losing everything financially.
So, welcome back, everybody, to the latest edition of the Enlightened Passenger Show. And really excited to have a first-time guest with us today. And I say a first-time guest because we have our long-form show that has been around for 15 years, and we haven't had this guest whatsoever yet. So I always get excited when we have a new guest on. So Humble the Poet, so excited to have you here today. And Humble, with this show, because we don't have as much time as my long form where I might kind of jump in with some softer questions, I like to jump in like kind of really deep with this show. And so this is probably a deep question, and I want to make sure we talk about your book that you have coming out and some of the aspects of it. But I want to ask you about this big word we hear often called legacy. And just to get your take on, what does that word, if anything, mean to you?
I think it scratches the itches of people's desire to live forever. And I think they view that through legacy. Me personally, it's not something that I'm dramatically interested in. I'm not super concerned with that. I appreciate the temporariness of existence, and knowing that every moment I have is fleeting is probably what gives it value for me. So this concept of something being forever, we watch movies and everything is they lived happily ever after, and we don't see the next day. Right. And I've kind of divorced that idea, and more so it's like, let's create moments, let's enjoy the moments and move on to the next moment. And life is a collection of these moments, and then one day we won't be here anymore, and that's what makes it amazing.
So I love that. I've had two unique answers in the last probably couple of weeks that are so different than what I usually hear. And what's interesting is now I'm starting to see a trend, which is the idea of people not being as concerned with legacy. So I had Dr. Joe Vitale, who was in The Secret, and he said, I don't give a darn about legacy. He said, because there's people that need my help right now. They need me in the now versus what I do down the road or whatever. So I don't care about that. And then just today I had a guest, Dr. Greg Reed, who said he doesn't even think it's a thing. Like he talked about how he did this event, and he said he did this event where he asked people to stand up, and then he said, sit down if you know your father's name. Or sorry, keep standing if you know your father's name. So of course everybody stood up. Then most people stood up, I guess I'll say. Then he said grandfather, so a few people sat down. Then he said great grandfather, more people sat down. By the time you get to great great grandfather, almost nobody in the room knew their great great grandfather's first name. And he said, so is legacy really a thing? That's your own family, and you don't even know who your great great grandfather is. And I just thought that was a really profound take on it. But it's interesting. I'm starting to see this trend of people saying, now is where it's at. So I just think that's kind of cool. Now is the new sexy, I think. Like that's
and I think also from the standpoint of like being a public figure, and it's like, okay, you start to realize that Elvis, Tupac, they're with their intense fan base, as they get older and they pass away, so does their name. And then when you have these kind of forever names, you don't even realize they're people's names. Like nobody knows who JP Morgan is. We know it's a bank, but it's named after a person. Or I'm from Canada, Toronto. We have a big stadium called Rogers Stadium, and it's named after a guy named Ted Rogers. But it becomes so synonymous, or McDonald's, or anything else. So I don't know if that's much of a legacy if you're just a random name. And I think there's a beauty there, because all we do have is now. Ironically, I have that tattooed on my hand to remind me that the only thing we have is now. Yeah, maybe not ironically, but that's my reminder all the time that the only thing we have is now.
I love it. And so I wanted to, I guess, continue this theme. Legacy is one of these things I'm sure you've been asked before. People ask about a lot. Another common question I think people get asked a lot, but I love the different answers, is about how a person defines success. So what does this big word success mean to you? And again, I'll say, if anything.
For me now, which I recently redefined success for myself, I define it as fun and hopefulness. I have since acquired a beautiful young puppy, and she reminds me every day that we don't have time to waste. Let's play. And she wakes up, yawns, stretches, and grabs the nearest ball and wants to play literally all day. And I realized, like, wow, you get it. Everything we're doing, everything we're doing is in pursuit of this fun. So, I chase fun and I chase hopefulness. And hopefulness for me, the definition of that is having something to look forward to, being excited about something in the future. So for me, that's success. And that, having something to look forward to and having fun doesn't require a tax bracket, doesn't require a level of status or following on social media. It just requires knowing what you consider fun, knowing what you're excited about, and doing some work to make it happen.
So I dig that as well, because we have a new puppy, 7-8 months, I think, Pomeranian, so a really tiny puppy. And but he's just
Beautiful.
like all out all day, but about the moment. Now, I will say he gets pretty focused on food. So he's like, I think food, that's in the moment,
Mhm.
but it's like he needs to work on that. Like his brain is consumed by food. It made me think of Seinfeld. Jerry Seinfeld did this comedy special where he said, like, when you're a kid, you hear about the concept of people giving away free candy, and that's all you can think of is get candy, get candy. That's like your whole goal in life. And my dog's goal is like get food, get food. But he's still living in the moment more than people that are like, uh-oh, what's going to happen tomorrow? Or, I can't believe that happened to me yesterday. And so I love that. But also
Yes.
we have 2 young kids and they truly live in the moment. Like everything's about this moment right now. And so I've gotten constant reminders, and it has been a lesson for me, because I was probably not, I don't usually live in the past, but my challenge was living in the future. Like I can't wait till this happens. And I've kind of had a wake up call. So I wanted to ask you as well, we had a chance to talk really briefly off air about this, but when we look at things like, New Year's, for example, when we're getting into a new year, people are always focused on resolutions. And yet we hear, and I'd look at your take on this, but we hear big numbers like only X amount of resolutions ever stick after like whatever 20 days. So it's like only like 10% after 21 days or something. I'd love to get your take on resolutions, and if you have an idea around either how we can make them last longer or if we should even make resolutions.
Yeah, so I definitely think we shouldn't make resolutions. And I think, what a resolution is an expectation. And I think in the world of love, self-love, and even our love for other people, expectations, really ends up closing those pathways to love. So when you say to yourself, okay, I need to lose 10 pounds, my New Year's resolution is to lose 10 pounds, what you're telling yourself is, I'm not happy with myself the way I am. And while you're on this journey to lose the 10 pounds, you're constantly reminding yourself that you're not good enough as is. And then you create this emotional kind of goalpost that when I lose this 10 pounds, I'll somehow feel amazing and better. And the truth of the matter is, the type of dopamine drop that comes from, standing on that scale and seeing yourself a little bit less it's fleeting, and there's going to be a little voice in your head that's like, what's next? So what I recommend for people, and this is the same thing even in your relationships, when you set expectations for people, it almost is setting up to fail. So what I would say is, instead, is set intentions, set directions. The word sin actually translates to aimless. So, to live in sin is to live without aim. So instead, what we should be doing is living a life of orientation. Pick a direction. I'm not telling you what direction. Pick a direction and head in that direction. A vague target is better than no target. So instead of saying I need to lose 10 pounds, say I want to live a healthier life. I want to eat a healthier breakfast, and I'm going to work on that slowly. If my breakfast has 5 pieces to its components, change 1 piece a day and make that change over 5 days. And then once you get a regular routine with the breakfast, then we'll focus on lunch. Setting a direction is better because we can celebrate constant progress. And progress can be framed. So, maybe I ate healthy 5 out of 7 days. I can frame it in terms of a week. Or if I frame it in terms of a month, I'll feel even better, versus saying, oh, I didn't eat healthy today. I'm a piece of garbage. And I think that's really important. Setting intentions is much more sustainable. We're not going to, kill ourselves to hit a certain goal and then kind of, fall back after. This will allow us to feel better. So it's progress over perfect. And that's a big idea that I talk about in the book, in terms of opening pathways to love.
Well, and I want to, you mentioned the book. I want to circle back to the book as well. And, but I want to ask you before we jump there, I want to ask you, did you, because I was talking to somebody, I'll explain it this way. I was talking to Colin Mockery the other day. So, whose line is it anyway? Canadian improv person. And he said, you know, when he was younger, like when he was a kid, that wasn't even a job. So like he had no idea, like he couldn't say this is what I want to do for a living because it didn't even exist. And he said, funny because people will say to him now, how do I do what you do? And he said, I don't know the answer because he said there's only 4 of us. Like there's only like because they're on Whose Lines Then Anyway, but really nobody else is doing improv at that level. So like, how do you get that job? My question out of that is what you do now, like on the for example, the spoken word side. Like, was this a career option for you, or was this something that you decided? You know, in recent years? Like, I'm just curious if it was something you even aspired to. Did you know early on this was going to be your path, or was it a happy accident?
Oh no, it was almost the exact opposite. I was an elementary school teacher, and I was teaching the 3rd grade, and that was my first foray into adult life. It was the first time I didn't have homework. I went to work, came back, and then I'm like, "What do you do with the rest of your day?" And it's like, you know, people go out to the bars, they do whatever. And I was a young single guy. So then it was more, and I grew up on hip hop, and I grew up on, you know, spoken word, slam poetry and everything. So it really was, the first time I did it was kind of like a dare at a coffee shop that had a couple pretty girls in there. And my friend was like, yo, go on stage, let's see what we can do. And, you know, using it as an icebreaker and falling in love with the experience and spending more time doing it at poetry slams, joining poetry communities. And I think what really changed it for me was I began recording my performances just so I can watch myself, but also then sharing it on YouTube. And this is when YouTube was in its infancy, and a community was formed from that. People started coming out to see me because of that. So it kind of organically grew. And it wasn't until I left my job thinking I had enough opportunities in this space, and I truly didn't, when the real learning began. And then that was both a learning of personal growth, because I was unemployed, I was in a bunch of debt, and I had no idea how creatives made money at that point. I thought, you know, at that point, my only belief was you get discovered. Puff Daddy finds you and throws a bag of money over your head, and it's happily ever after. And then you start to realize that's not the case. And it really was kind of a journey both of creative expression, but also learning how to pick up on the breadcrumbs of how other creatives. Every time I met a creative, I would just be like, so how are you paying your rent? Like, what's that? And, you know, and the first creative was like, well, you know, you do a live show, but you got to sell a t-shirt or something after that. And I was trying to think to myself, like, what would be more valuable than a $20 t-shirt that's going to shrink in the wash, you know? And then I was like, you know, I was already writing so much for therapy for myself because I was going through these tough times. And as I was sharing that with my community at the time, which was only on Facebook, they were like, you should write a book. And when I realized a book's the same price as a t-shirt, but will last way longer and have much more of an impact, I self-published. So things were intentional but organic in that context. And ironically, I was having a conversation yesterday. I live in LA now, and I came out here because opportunities in TV and film have presented themselves to me. But it's the first time in my entire career I've met a gatekeeper. I've met someone who said yes or no, that you can do this or not. And I'm not a fan of the experience. So, you know, much like Colin Mockery, I'm trying to continue my path of not going on the beaten path, because that itself is just crowded and full of traffic, and trying to blaze my own stuff and being like, okay, well, I want to bring a story to life. What are the essential elements? Okay, well, do I need to be waiting outside the Netflix building, hoping someone gives me an opportunity? Because that's never worked for me before. Let me find another way to get some money. Let me put this idea up on YouTube. Let me put it in different places. So for me, it's been an adventure more so than it's been intentional. But as the years have gone by, I've been a full-time artist now since 2011. So we're at 11 years. You do see the value of planning and being intentional, and you know, and things have gotten much better because of that. But at the same time too, as an artist, I've been, you know, shedding a lot of the things that have prevented me from being vulnerable. And in some ways that has made me a much stronger artist and a much stronger writer. But it's made it much more difficult for me to accept rejection, have business meetings and all of that, because I'm just feeling everything on top of my skin. So it was never intentional, but now that I think about it, I was 8 years old when I wrote my first story that became a hit in the classroom that they asked me to read 4 times. And there was always a love and an inkling for it. And I'm just honoring an obsession I already had and was lucky enough to discover.
Amazing. So let me ask you about the book. So can you tell us a little bit about the newest book and what people will experience when they're reading it, all that kind of good stuff?
Yeah, so the book is called How to Be Loved. This is my third major book with a major publisher. My first book was called Unlearn, and unlearning is the theme of everything I write. It's the idea is when I find a topic that I really need to learn, I go deep to understand it. And instead of becoming an expert, I just become the kid at the front of the class who takes the best notes. And after losing a really important relationship in my life, I really took a deep dive into the world of love, as everyone considers love very complicated. And I set out to write the simplest book ever written about love. And I'm proud to say I did. And I do want to put a little asterisk saying there's a difference between the word simple and easy. As an elementary school teacher, it's been my job to take complicated concepts and simplify them and make them less heavy. And that's what I did with love. And it was exploring the ideas of love, finding a lot of blind spots when it came to my own understandings of love, and realizing where a lot of my misconceptions of love came from. So the book is broken up into 3 sections. The first section is WTF love, like what is love? The second section is love for self, which is the biggest section. And the final section is love for others. So this is less of a book about how to find your soulmate and more of a book of how to open more pathways of love that has always existed around you. Because what I realized was my upbringing didn't really prime me to receive love. I was being showered with love, but I was an upside down bucket, unable to capture any of it. And instead of doing work to find the love, I had to do more work to realize love. And that meant turning over my bucket so I could receive what was already there. And our relationship with ourselves sets that tone for our relationship with everybody else. And the way I write is I write very short chapters. All my chapters are only 2 pages. My first book had 101 chapters. This book has 68 chapters, each chapter no longer than 2 to 3 pages. And taking important ideas and really just challenging old ideas that we have, because so much of what we believe about in love came from media, religion, heritage, culture, capitalism. This belief that we have to earn love is a big one. We have to be something to get love. That comes from companies wanting to sell you skincare products to make you feel like you're not enough as is. Otherwise, you wouldn't buy anything. And the style of writing that I do is it's not to share new information. It's to help you remember what you already know. At the end of the day, none of us are perfect, and we got to go easy on ourselves. But also, every single person we authentically love is not perfect, and none of their imperfections. You could probably write a book on their imperfections if you know them well enough, but none of their imperfections disqualify them from your love. And we've also held a baby for the first time and was flushed and filled with love. And that was our first interaction. Like, love doesn't require you to know someone for 5 years to love them. You can love something the first time you see it, because love is always there. And it's about what we do or don't do to cultivate these pathways to love. And, the really cool idea that I learned from a dude named Peter Crone was, you don't say I love you, you say you show me where love is. And then that gives us an opportunity to realize and discover and experience love in every direction. And that's an important idea to explore.
Wow. So is that the same? And I'm going by memory in this, but the same Peter Crone, he's an actor based in LA or near LA?
His claim to fame was being a personal trainer for the stars.
And was he in the movie Healed, do you know?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think his claim to it may be the same, but his claim to fame was he was Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise's trainer, and he was able to do this like massive body transformations with them very quickly. And then his secret was it wasn't in the training, it was in getting them to strengthen their relationship with themselves.
So I think it is the same Peter. He's the mine architect.
Oh, yes.
And yeah, he where's it at here? Mind architect, and because it said he works with entertainers, professional athletes, and global organizations. So the reason I asked that is because I interviewed him for a documentary a few years ago that we're still haven't released because of COVID. But yeah, so I was at his house in LA doing an interview with him, and yeah, he's like his stuff is profound, pretty game changer.
It is, and for this book I read, I'm telling you, every philosopher, every dating coach, every athlete, anyone who's ever mentioned love, I took deep dives, and you know, and when you take, this was my pandemic project, and I devoted 2 years just focusing on love in every capacity. And then the moment when you focus on love so deeply, you start to see love everywhere. And I would see love in every Kobe Bryant interview. I would see love in every musician talking about their work. You know, I would see love in, you know, a chef cooking food, and it helped me realize that, you know, we just have these skewed ideas, especially because we see it in the movies, which and they're much more linear when we live cyclical lives. And you know, my goal with this book was to create the simplest book about love to help people, you know, feel a lot less anxiety around it and understand that most of the time when they're having unpleasant experiences around love, it's not love. It's those reasonable facsimiles. It's these fast food versions of love. It's attention, it's power, it's validation, it's admiration, it's status, it's control, you know, or it's fear, you know. And these you know, these are bootleg versions of love. You know, these are that fake Gucci belt that looks like it, but it's not the real thing. And it's the same thing where, you know, our thirst and our desire for love is authentic, but many of the directions that we think we have to go to chase love aren't. And you know, let's go easy on ourselves. You know, no one was there to teach us that, and we were raised by, you know, imperfect humans who set a tone for us in terms of what we thought love would be. So as adults, you know, we lean towards what's familiar more than what's healthy. And if you grew up in an unhealthy environment, you're gonna be leaning towards more unhealthy individuals. And the goal of the book is just to help people become more aware of their own circumstances, ask themselves important questions, and better prime themselves to realize love that was always there. Love is a verb more than a thing, you know. And love exists in our sacrifice. It exists in our actions. It exists in our service. And so often that gets lost in the way this world is structuring itself.
So we have like 4 minutes left, and I want to make sure I ask you my passenger question, which is was the catalyst for this show. It's kind of what drove this show, which is around a book as well that isn't released yet called The Enlightened Passenger, a parable I wrote about two guys sitting on a plane, older guy, younger guy. Older guy teaches the younger guy some life advice that based on what he learned in all the years since. And so that, you know, has me pose this question to you, Humble, which is, if you were sitting on a plane, stranger passenger leans over to you and says, "Hey, need some help, need some life advice. What do you got?" What do you think you might tell said stranger on a plane?
The irony of that is I had the exact opposite situation. I was sitting on a plane. I took a bunch of NyQuil to sleep. I slept for like 8 hours of this like 15-hour flight. I woke up and the woman next to me said, "I was waiting for you to wake up so we can have a conversation." Turns out she was a Holocaust survivor. And what she said to me in our conversations was, "You're free the moment you decide to be free, even if it's in that moment alone." And she goes, "Freedom is when you decide to have nothing to lose." And it was so impactful on me that I actually tattooed it on my neck. Freedom is having nothing to lose. And it was one of these enlightened passenger moments. So at that point, you know, she had such an impact on me that I carved it in my skin. That's what I would tell somebody else. You're free the moment you decide to be free. And that's not just spiritually, I mean, even physically. And speaking to people and speaking for people who are fighting oppressive regimes right now, you know, even if you lose your life in the fight, the moment you decide you are free, you'll die a free person.
Wow. That's pretty profound advice, and it's pretty cool that it's a surreal thing that you got from somebody else as well. So and I noticed, by the way, it's funny, I didn't know about the tattoo part, but I noticed it was on the wall behind you too.
That and you know what? Ironic. That was a friend here who she models, and I got her a modeling gig. I helped her get a gig, and that was her gift to me. And I didn't know because one day I was sitting with her and she took a picture of me without me noticing, and she was taking a picture of the tattoo, and she created the quote based off the tattoo, and that was her thank you gift to me for getting her a job.
Wow, I love that. Amazing.
That whole wall is friends and family. That's a whole friends and family wall of art.
That's amazing. I love that. And I love that you share that. Like you bring that energy when you're doing an interview or probably just sitting in the house, what have you. It's just a great energy. And so the last question, I'll call it the unofficial question, but maybe just as important as any of the other ones, is for those that want to learn more about what you're doing and what you're up to and the work you're doing. And or the other side is for those that want to perhaps get the new book, where would you send them? Is there a hub?
Yeah, so the humblethepoet.com/love, and no matter where you are in the world, you'll find a link to get the book. It's on all the Amazons, it's in all the major bookstores. As well as, this book contains a lot of really personal, emotional stories. So the audio book was a journey to record. And you'll be hearing me sniffling, and you'll hear the tears in my audio version of the book. So it's available on Audible as well, and ebook as well. And again, that's humblethepoet.com/love. The book itself is called How to Be Loved: Simple Truths for Going Easier on Yourself, Embracing Imperfection, and Loving Your Way to a Better Life. And I can be found at Humble the Poet on all social medias. I participate most on Instagram. And right now, if you go on my Instagram, you'll find me begrudgingly doing a lot of social media trendy videos, forcing myself to do it to get the word out for this book, which as my audience knows, I'm not the biggest fan of social media. So they are enjoying every moment of it. It's like when someone dresses up their puppy for Halloween and the puppy's like, why are you making me do this? That's pretty much my social media right now. It's me. Why are you making me make this video? Why am I doing all of this? And the comments are all my audience making fun of me, laughing, enjoying it, being like, oh my God, look what this guy has to do. But they're saying, you know what, it works. Now I know you got a book coming out. And kind of trying to taking it in jest and having as much fun as I can with it.
Well, mic drop. Humble the Poet. I'm going to go check out. I know what I'm going to do now. After my next couple interviews, I'm going to go check out your feed now to see all the things that they're making you do and you're begrudgingly doing. And I'm going to have a little bit of entertainment, and I might grab some popcorn. So
enjoy it.
I will. So this has been an absolute pleasure. I'll of course wave the flag, tell people to go grab the new book, and thank you for all the great work you're doing. And we'll call it, with your permission, a to be continued.
Definitely to be continued.